Cedar Hollow wasn't the kind of town you read about in guidebooks. Tucked between rolling hills and thick woods, it was the kind of place where porch swings creaked in the breeze and mailboxes leaned like they were sharing old secrets. When Emily Parker and her mother arrived, it felt like stepping into a forgotten painting, one filled with winding streets, sleepy storefronts, and the slow hum of cicadas in the late afternoon air. They weren't running from anything exactly, just chasing something simpler, quieter, after years in a city where noise never slept. Emily was 10 years old, bursting with curiosity and quick to laugh. Her explorer spirit had been part of her for as long as she could remember, but her bravest adventures had always been shared with Bruno, a strong, intelligent German shepherd with warm eyes and unbreakable loyalty. Bruno wasn't just a dog. He was a gift from Emily's father, who traveled often for work. He had given her Bruno to be her companion, her guardian, when he couldn't always be there himself. Her mother found work at the small community library, and Emily found freedom in the wide open spaces and crooked sidewalks. They unpacked their lives slowly, one dusty box at a time, filling the old house on Oak Street with new beginnings. On the very first morning, Emily and Bruno sensed something about Cedar Hollow that didn't quite fit the postcard image. It wasn't something you could see or touch. It was something you felt, like a question whispered just out of reach. At first, Cedar Hollow seemed like the perfect place to land. Emily loved the way the morning fog curled around the rooftops, how the air smelled faintly of pine and something sweet she couldn't name. Bruno loved the endless trails, the wide fields where he could race the wind before they moved. Emily's mother had spent weeks researching the neighborhood. Photos showed smiling families, tree-lined sidewalks, a bright elementary school just 3 blocks away. They had pictured bustling afternoons filled with laughter, bikes strewn across yards, kids running from house to house. It seemed like the kind of place where childhood lived its best days. But after they arrived, Emily noticed something strange. For a town so full of promise, it felt too quiet. Not the peaceful, storybook kind of quiet, the kind that made you look over your shoulder, the kind that made Bruno lift his head at night, ears pricked, nose twitching at scents Emily couldn't detect. The playground near the library was almost always empty. Swings creaked in the breeze, untouched after school. Emily expected crowds of kids racing home or playing tag across the yards, but the streets stayed oddly still. When children did appear, they clung tightly to their parents' hands, eyes wide, laughter muted. And then there were the glances, the way grown-ups lowered their voices when they passed, how some parents pulled their children closer when Bruno bounded up, even though his tail wagged happily. It wasn't fear of the dog. It was fear of something else. Emily and Bruno walked home from a market. She caught sight of 2 older boys lingering by the school fence. They weren't doing anything, just standing there, staring. When they noticed Emily looking, they smiled, but there was no kindness in it, just calculation. Bruno stiffened at her side, his body tense. That night, Bruno refused to sleep at the foot of Emily's bed like he usually did. Instead, he sat by her window, staring out into the darkness. His body was still, but his muscles were tight. Ready. Emily lay awake longer than usual. The sound of Bruno's steady breathing the only comfort against the heavy hush pressing down on their new home. She didn't have a word for it yet, but deep down she knew. Cedar Hollow wasn't just sleepy. It was hiding something. And whatever it was close enough for Bruno to sense, and for her to fear. The playground by the library always felt strangely empty, so Emily decided to try her luck somewhere new, Willow Park. A little farther, but it promised in brochures to be full of life. The 3rd Friday after their move, she clipped Bruno's leash, packed a tennis ball in her backpack, and set off toward Willow Park. Just 2 blocks down. The park was beautiful, just like the pictures. Bright murals wrapped around the old brick restrooms, and the slides and swings gleamed under the golden afternoon sun. But it was almost empty. Only a few parents sat on the benches, watching their little ones carefully. No older kids ran wild. No soccer balls flew. No races up the jungle gym. Emily frowned, but didn't let it dampen her mood. Bruno bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tail wagging. She tossed the ball a few times, laughing as Bruno returned, panting and proud. She was reaching for the ball again when she heard it. A muffled shout, sharp and scared. Turning quickly, Emily spotted them near the back fence. A boy about her age, cornered by two older boys she recognized immediately. The same ones who had loitered by the school fence days earlier. One shoved the younger boy roughly while the other laughed. Low and mean. Before Emily could think, Bruno was already moving. His ears flattened, his pace quickened, a deep growl starting low in his throat. Emily followed, her heart hammering. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice cracking slightly. "Leave him alone." The older boys stiffened. One muttered something under his breath and kicked at the dirt, but neither tried to argue. Not with Bruno standing there, chest broad, eyes locked on them, every muscle ready to defend. Without a word, they slunk away, disappearing between two sheds near the maintenance building. The younger boy wiped his sleeve across his nose and gave Emily a shaky smile. "Thanks," he mumbled. "I'm Jake." "I'm Emily," she said, offering her hand. Bruno sat between them, still watchful, still tense. Jake glanced around, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're new, right? No one told you. It's better not to stay at the park too long after school." Emily's stomach tightened. She glanced at Bruno, who hadn't relaxed an inch. Something told her Jake wasn't exaggerating. The next morning, Emily couldn't shake what Jake had said. All through breakfast, her mind drifted back to the fear she'd seen in his face, the way he glanced over his shoulder, even when no one was around. Cedar Hollow's sunny sidewalks and storybook houses suddenly felt different, like a stage set hiding darker scenes behind the curtains. Jake found her again after school near the old basketball court behind the library. Bruno trotted at her side, but even he seemed more alert, more serious. "They're called the Ridge Boys," Jake whispered, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "Sam and Kyle. Everybody knows to stay away." "Why? Doesn't someone tell the teachers?" Emily asked, voice low. Jake shrugged. "They know, but their older brothers hang out with Coach Davis, and their dad owns the plumbing company. No one wants trouble." Emily tightened her hands around Bruno's leash. A part of her wanted to march straight to the principal's office, but another, louder part whispered, "Stay out of it. Stay safe. You're new here. You don't even know the whole story." That night, Emily stared at the ceiling, wide awake. She didn't want trouble. She didn't want to make things worse. And maybe it wasn't really her problem. But the next day, she saw it happen again. A tiny first grader shoved behind the cafeteria dumpsters, a shy girl's backpack ripped and thrown into a puddle, all while grown-ups looked the other way. Each time, Emily felt something twist tighter inside her, a knot of anger, fear, and something else. Responsibility. She wasn't alone, she realized. There were kids like Jake. There were teachers who maybe didn't know everything. And there was Bruno, always Bruno, steady and brave at her side. But she needed more. She needed someone who could help without making things worse. That's when she thought of Miss Rachel, the new assistant librarian, young, kind, and sharp-eyed. Someone who didn't just see, but noticed. The next afternoon, Emily asked Jake to meet her at the library after school. This time not to talk in whispers by the playground, but to plan, quietly, smartly. If they were going to do this, they would do it right. No rushing in. No risking everything. Because Emily Parker wasn't just brave. She was careful. And she knew real courage wasn't about acting without fear. It was about knowing the fear and choosing to act anyway. At first, Emily thought the few blurry snapshots might be enough. Hidden behind the wide library windows, she had caught Sam and Kyle Ridge roughing up a third grader, spraying something from a small canister right into his face. Heart pounding, Emily snapped photo after photo. But deep down, she knew better. In Cedar Hollow, people protected their own. A few distant images wouldn't break through the silence that cloaked the town. Miss Rachel agreed. That evening, she studied the photos with a careful frown. "This isn't nothing," she said gently. "But if we want real change, we need more. We need the truth to be undeniable." The next day after school, it became undeniable and far more dangerous. Jake came flying around the corner of the library, panting. They know, he gasped. They heard about the pictures. They're coming. Emily barely had time to react. From the alley behind the library, Sam and Kyle charged at her, faster and angrier than she had ever seen. You think you're so smart? Sam spat, shoving Emily hard. Bruno lunged instantly, growling, but Emily stumbled backward, tripping over the curb. Her elbow hit the concrete with a sickening crack, and pain shot her arm. She cried out, clutching her arm to her chest. Sam loomed over her. "Delete it," he demanded, reaching for her backpack. Bruno barked fiercely, blocking him. Hidden a few yards away, Miss Rachel lifted her phone higher, filming everything. Jake ducked lower behind a tree, ready to call for help. Emily gritted her teeth against the pain. With her good hand, she clutched Bruno's leash, feeling the dog's solid strength steady her. "You're in so much trouble," Kyle sneered. He kicked at Emily's backpack, scattering her books onto the pavement. That was the final basic mistake. Bruno leapt forward, barking so loudly it froze the boys in place. Miss Rachel stepped out from behind the car. Her voice sliced through the air. "Enough! I have it all recorded. Step away from her now." Sam's bravado crumbled. His eyes darted from Miss Rachel's phone to Bruno's bare teeth. Kyle grabbed his arm, tugging hard. "Let's go," he hissed, in a flurry of panic. They bolted down the alley, vanishing into the maze of backstreets. Miss Rachel rushed over, crouching beside Emily. "Are you all right?" she asked, her hands gentle but urgent. Emily nodded stiffly, wincing as she moved her arm. "I think it's just bruised," she whispered. Jake ran up, eyes wide with worry. "We got everything," he said breathlessly. "We have proof, real proof." And they did. A clear video showing the Ridge boys assaulting Emily, threatening her, damaging her belongings, all captured, with witnesses to back it up. This time, Cedar Hollow would have no choice but to listen. The video didn't stay secret for long. By the next morning, Miss Rachel had carefully sent the footage, complete unedited, to the school principal, Mr. Lawson, and the town's community officer, Deputy Hargrove. She also shared copies with few trusted parents who had long suspected something was wrong, but had never had proof. When Emily arrived at school that day, she immediately felt the difference. The usual whispers and sidelong glances were sharper, heavier. Even the teachers seemed tense, gathering in small knots by the office. Jake found her at her locker, his face pale but excited. "They're calling an emergency meeting," he whispered. "Parents, teachers. The deputy's coming too." Emily's stomach twisted into knots. She hadn't realized until now just how big this could become. This wasn't just a few bullies getting detention. This was the whole town being forced to look at what they had let fester in the shadows. The meeting was held that afternoon in the school gym. Rows of folding chairs filled up fast. Parents, teachers, even some curious older students. Emily sat near the back, Bruno at her feet, Jake beside her. Miss Rachel stood close, a quiet anchor of support. Deputy Hargrove spoke first, explaining the situation with calm authority. Then Mr. Lawson played the video on a large projector screen. The room fell into stunned silence. The footage was undeniable. Sam and Kyle Ridge shoving a younger boy, threatening Emily, pushing her to the ground, kicking her backpack. All captured clearly with audio and witnesses. Gasps rippled through the room. Several parents muttered angrily. A few stood up, faces pale with shock. In the front row, Mr. and Mrs. Ridge sat frozen. Mr. Ridge's face flushed an ugly red. Mrs. Ridge clutched her purse with white-knuckled hands. Deputy Hargrove laid out plainly, "What you see here constitutes assault, harassment, and intimidation. Actions will be taken." Sam and Kyle were called forward, stiff and sullen, their usual smirks gone. "You're suspended, effective immediately," Mr. Lawson said, his voice hard. "And you'll be facing further consequences from the authorities." Sam tried to mumble something. An excuse, maybe. But Mr. Ridge put a hand on his son's shoulder and pushed him back into his seat. It was over. At least the worst part of it was. As people filtered out of the gym, a few parents came over Emily. They didn't say much, just a hand on her shoulder, a soft thank you, a nod of respect. Miss, Rachel knelt beside her. You were brave, she said. You stood up when others didn't. Emily glanced at Bruno, who wagged his tail once, proud and steady. She smiled for the first time in days. Maybe Cedar Hollow wasn't perfect, but now, thanks to a stubborn girl, a loyal dog, and a few good people willing to see the truth, it had a chance to be better. That evening, after the meeting had ended and the crowds had dispersed, Emily returned home, exhausted but lighter somehow. She had barely stepped to the front door when her mother, Laura Parker, rushed forward and enveloped her in a hug. I just heard everything, her mother whispered, voice thick with emotion. The principal called. Miss Rachel, too. Emily stiffened for a moment, half expecting a lecture, but when she looked up, she saw pride shining through her mother's tears, even as worry clouded her features. You were brave, Laura said, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's forehead. Braver than I ever knew, but you scare me half to death. Emily nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't mean to make things dangerous, she said. I couldn't stay quiet. Laura knelt down so they were eye level. You did the right thing, she said firmly. Standing up for others is never wrong. But next time, you don't have to do it alone, okay? You have me. Always. She pulled Emily into another hug. Tighter this time, as if anchoring her to something steady and safe. Emily blinked back tears and nodded again. Later that weekend, as word spread fully across Cedar Hollow, the town seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief. Families lingered longer on their porches. Children rode bikes freely again, laughing without constantly looking over their shoulders. The playgrounds near the library were lively once more, filled with games and shrieks of joy rather than whispers of fear. Neighbors who had once kept their distance now waved and chatted on the sidewalks. It felt like something heavy had been lifted, something they hadn't even realized had weighed them down until it was gone. And somewhere, watching from a distance, Sam and Kyle Ridge sat side by side on a low stone wall near their house. They didn't say much, but they saw it. The way kids smile more freely now, the way parents laugh with less tension. They saw the murals going up near the old lumberyard, the community painting hope over old scars. For the first time, a cold pit of guilt settled in Sam's chest. Kyle kicked at a loose stone and muttered, "We messed up, huh?" Sam didn't answer right away. He just watched the town they had once shadowed and realized what they had almost stolen from it. "Yeah," he said finally, voice low. "We really did." And for the first time, maybe he wished things could have been different. Autumn settled deeper over Cedar Hollow, painting every street corner in shades of gold and rust. The breeze carried the scent of damp leaves and woods, and everywhere you looked there was a sense of something new, something lighter. The change wasn't loud. It didn't come with banners or grand speeches. It was in the little things. Children now raced along Willow Street again, laughing as they played. Parents lingered longer by the playground fences, chatting easily with one another. Neighbors waved when passing by, and the old playground behind the library buzzed with life. The way it should have always been. Emily felt that change inside herself, too. The bruises on her arm had long faded, but their memory remained, a reminder of what standing up sometimes cost and why it mattered. Emily walked the halls of her school a little straighter now. She didn't feel invincible, not at all, but she felt stronger. Jake remained her constant companion, daring her into lunchtime adventures and trading whispered jokes during art class. Miss Rachel, ever watchful, stood behind the library desk, always slipped her a knowing smile, and Bruno was more than a pet. He was a shield, a guardian, and a reminder that some battles weren't meant to be fought alone. One Saturday, Emily and Jake joined the town's community project at the old lumberyard, now officially renamed Cedar Hollow Commons. They planted flowers, painted benches, and helped scrub away the last scars of what the place had once been. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky in watercolor hues, Emily stood before a fresh square of wet concrete near the garden beds. Without hesitation, she pressed her hand into the soft surface. Jake did the same beside her. Then, with a gentle tug on his leash, Bruno placed one perfect paw print next to them both. The air smelled like hope. Across the street, Emily noticed two familiar figures, Sam and Kyle Ridge, standing near a tree, watching silently. No smirks, no threats, just watching. For a fleeting moment, Emily met Sam's eyes. There was no hatred there, only a heavy kind of regret. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. She turned back to Bruno, giving him a playful nudge. "Ready for the next adventure," she whispered. Bruno wagged his tail once, steady and sure. Whatever came next, Emily Parker knew one thing for certain. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was growing, and so was Cedar Hollow.